It's amazing how much like children we've been all of our lives and how we put on facades to convince ourselves of so many things. And it's instilled in us, not necessarily maliciously, but all of our lives, that we can be solely dependent upon ourselves and that we need to. And we know who is behind that, but the vessels that were used, whether it's us guys, oh, you can't show emotion, oh, unless it's an athletic endeavors. You can't show emotion when it's tender. You got to be tough. You'll have to bear with me. You can't trust your heart to someone. Not fully. And then whatever background the Lord allows you to walk through, whether you know of the Lord when you're little, whether you don't know of the Lord when you're little, the enemy knows who you are. The enemy knows you were chosen in the Son before the foundation of this world. And our merciful Heavenly Father and our beloved groom allowed him to know it. And I think of all these brothers and sisters here and the ones that aren't in this building right now, every single one of them, and those out there that don't even know they're His yet. He spared nothing. Oh, 3 or 4 months ago, I wasn't this person. I wanted to be, didn't know it was possible. Didn't even know what. I couldn't have dreamt to ask it. I always thought I loved everybody more than myself. I always thought they were pure motives. But I had to realize that even though I was trying to convince myself that all the years of service, the part of me that doubted Him was always trying to purchase what was freely given. Love with no strings attached. And I was never a little bitty guy. I came out the size of a watermelon. But from as far back as I can remember, I always sought something that I could never get and didn't realize I couldn't get it from a person, no matter who it was, no matter how much they loved me. And the Lord allowed me to see through marred vision for so many years for a reason. That way when He would pull that veil back and I could see clearly through those tears, I could cherish Him above all else. And I could kiss the wounds that brought me to Him. And the Lord appointed It was the Lord's choosing. Who are we to argue with the Lord? The Lord showed that the court of King Jesus, that Blake and Sarah were to dance as a symbol of what he will do with each and every single one of us and all those that are his. Not the invited guest, but those that want more. Those that are not satisfied being an invited guest. Those that can look and say, like Moses, Lord, if you won't draw us near, take us out now. If you won't go, just finish me. For so many years I withheld my love from y'all when it was really me withholding my heart from him. And he never, it hurt. It hurt him deep. Countless times he showed me over and over, protected my physical life, protected my heart at times. I was throwing my little temper fit. Woe is me, poor is me. Why do you hate me? I never would finish the Psalms. Because David had those thoughts. But every time at the end of it, he said, I know who you are. I know you're faithful. I know you love me. I couldn't do it. And before this new wine started pouring out, we were in a Bible study. I don't even know how it came up because I don't remember Psalms being read. But there was a pause and I looked over at Michael. And I said, the Psalms have always troubled me because I knew that was supposed to be what I would do. He wants us all to do that right there. Good, bad, ugly, in between. Throwing a temper fit, not throwing a temper fit. Pour your whole heart out to him. And that he would understand. But I couldn't get to that place. And it wasn't, I knew, you ain't hiding anything from him. He knows. He knows. It's like Brian said, the lead sets the tempo, but the accepting party sets the distance. And I have to say that I've loved y'all as fully as I could at the time because I didn't see clearly. And I thought I was loving him as fully as I should. And Michael, the other guys were around, but it was like me and Michael was the only one there. And I love them all dearly. And he looked at me. He said, John, if you can't get to that place with the Lord or his body, you're in chains and you can't move. That just pierced right through. And that is what started me seeking, searching. That's what made me realize been withholding so long. It's like Pastor said, oh, Peter, I know I've been there. I know how irritating it was for Peter because he couldn't see clearly. Oh, he was getting annoyed at the Lord. I love you. I love you with everything I have. And the Lord knew something Peter didn't. No, you're not. Oh, you love me. You'll do things for me, but you don't love me like that. You don't even realize you can't. I'm sorry for taking so long. Now I know why I didn't prepare anything. He said to his disciples the most precious words I feel in the whole Bible was right before he went into the garden. All of them are precious because all of it's a love story. For us right now, it's the Song of Songs. And that's another thing. For years, I would not read that. I would not. I could not. I started to several times. I was like, no, I can't do it. And it wasn't because I wanted to withhold my heart, but I was. And it's for a reason he allowed it, because it wasn't time to awaken that. The Lord knew exactly when I needed that blinders pulled off my eyes. So it doesn't matter how many times we fall in the mud, how deep the wound or wounds plural are that are raw and we think are healed, and we think we've laid things down, and then we find ourselves a week later or a day later or an hour later with the same attitude. We can't lay it down till he lets us see it for what it really is. And I realize that, and I know why, because it's just like when the Lord was working on me, it was the Lord, because it's nothing in my power. The night before the court of King Jesus, or I guess technically the morning of, before it got daylight, all night. I didn't plan on it. Part of me wanted to go play volleyball and fellowship, but I knew that's not where I was supposed to be. And I thought, well, I'll go fellowship because I saw them over there, and then I seen Dad on the bleachers talking and visiting with people, and then the rest of them were building a fire. So I started from my cabin across. I got to the fire pit and realized, you're not supposed to be here. And it wasn't a bad, you're not supposed to be here. It wasn't like the enemy was saying, get out of it. I mean, he did that this feast. He tried to keep me from coming to this feast. Very, very much so. So many irrational fears. And I came down here and I came up to this altar and I didn't even kneel. And I stood here for just a couple of minutes. And I was like, I'm not supposed to be here either. But it's like a bewildered look, because you're like, where am I? I'm restless. Where? He didn't say go to so-and-so or go do this. I was meandering. And he was letting me meander. He was leading me and I just didn't know it. And I turned around and, some of the ladies were in the kitchen who wasn't down there. And I was standing pretty much between here and James right there, and I turned around and I saw Mama T at that back table that was there with the stuff, cleaning it off. I was like, okay, that's where I'm supposed to be. So I went back there and I embraced her, and she fell into my chest and I felt him. So with the way the Lord has moved, using Shane and Sandy, especially Sandy, breaking down the dignity and not caring, wanting to dance before the Lord just free and whatever it looks like. I asked her to come sit with me. And I walked over to the recliner and sat down, and she looked around for another chair. And I patted my lap and I said, no, right here. And she said, I must break you, and giggled. And I said, And the Lord ministered as much healing to me as he was ministering to them all. And then it went from her, when the Lord was finished there, moved Emma, and then moved Chelsea, or not Chelsea, Shelby, both to be there for quite a period of time. Then Emma went to bed, and then he moved me to have Jade ask her mom if she could come up. And it was Jade and Shell and me for until about roughly 2:30, and then I knew it's time to walk them to their cabins. And so I walked them to their cabins. I did not know what was going on with Blake. The Lord did. That was roughly around the time that he was getting ill. I took Shell to their cabin, and I came back up here to turn everything down and turn everything off, because I turned it down before I left, but I didn't turn it off, the praise. And the Lord knew that, because if I'd have done that, I probably wouldn't have came back up here. I came back up here, turn it off, and go to bed. Try not to stay up too late. And when I came back in here, I walked up to the thing, I walked up here to get something I'd left, I think. And I knew, you're supposed to stay right here. So I went back there and cranked up all the lights were down. Cranked up the volume. Started praising, and then halfway through the song, I started doing spiritual prayer, well, not in spiritual language, but prayer, spiritual warfare. I had no clue as to why. I knew the enemy was mounting, but I didn't know what he was doing. And I knew the Lord allowed everything. He set the boundary, and he also brought him across it on purpose. In our crushing, he brings forth the new wine. Nothing's a mistake. I used to be saddled when I would pray and not see something within either immediate or a short period of time. I would get doubtful, like I did something or I wasn't where I needed to be. But I didn't operate like that last night, and that was the Lord, because it went from what I used to be to way over here, and I don't know how I got that far. And part of what he inspired me to, and I even made, which I told him they're on notice. They've crossed the boundary. They've attacked his beloved. The reckoning's going to be severe. And I also put them on notice, there's nothing that can conquer us, not even the grave. So, whatever they're doing and whatever attacks they're allowed to do is making us the vessels he wants us to be. He's preparing us for this. And I'm going to try to go a little faster because I don't want to take up the whole. But anyway, I was praising and praying and acting like a fool in here for the Lord. And I stretched out here. And it was just, I never turned it down. I just let it praise. And I was praising there, and I passed smooth out. It was, last time I remember looking at the clock, it was like 4:30. 4:40, 4:30, somewhere in there. Because I had my phone face down. It was muted and silenced, but I had it over there. Because my flesh was saying, well, you need to be wise and go be fresh for services and all that. Or fresh for setting up. It wasn't service day, but because there's so much that goes into the preparation. And it's not let's be nice to people. It's the Lord moves us. It's destined from the Lord. And so I was laying here past smooth out, and within an hour and a half, roughly, it was like, well, no, it was probably less than that because it was before 5:30. I just snapped awake. Just snapped awake right out of bushy tail and got up and started praising again. It was still going. And I was up here when everybody started coming in for breakfast. And anybody like David that knows me, when you smell food, that's break time. But it wasn't for me. And then I noticed that Jody and a couple others, I don't remember who, I think it was Shelby and someone else, came up here and for a while, and that was appointed. They needed to be up here. And then I went out to take care of my stuff, and remember who? Oh, Sarah came into the kitchen. She looked so tired, and she had Elise. And she said, "Blake's sick." And I immediately got pissed. I thought, "Oh, no, you don't. That dance is supposed to happen." And she was talking, and Jody was right there, and I felt like Blake's not the only one that needs the prayer. So me and Jody anointed her and prayed. And then I asked her, I said, I don't remember if it was in the kitchen, but a little bit afterwards, I said, "Do you think Blake's up for prayer? Has he been anointed?" She said, "No, he hasn't been anointed. I don't know if he's up or not." And there's something he had me do that I've never felt led to do before. And I know it was him, because I wouldn't have never thought of it. I never had that ability, as much as I love Blake all this time. I've never had that ability to have that kind of love. I thought I did, but I didn't. And I was waiting on her because she said he'd message. I didn't know whether he was going to message her or him. I had my phone. And I just walked down to the ramp of his cabin quietly because I didn't want to disturb him, and I didn't know when he'd be ready. And somehow I didn't scroll all the way to the bottom. But she said he'd text. So then I sat there, I'm like, just praying quietly to myself. And I scrolled it up. I realized I saw a little glimpse of something below it. I scrolled it up, and she said, "Well, in 10 minutes. And I noticed the time had been about 12 minutes. He'd be ready. So I went and tapped on his door, and bless his heart, I walked in there, and I could see it all over his face. His blanket was from here down. His chest was bare. He was sweating. He looked, bless his heart. And I took the anointing oil. I anointed him. I started kissing him on the forehead. I wasn't the least bit worried about it being contagious, him running a fever, nothing. And then I felt, no, that ain't good enough. That ain't what the Lord wants. And I leaned over him and buried my chest to his chest and put my left cheek against his, right in here. Technically, I guess left breast, but more on his shoulder. And I noticed that when I pressed, he dug in deep. And I can't remember all the words, but he was lavish in love. And I do remember in the kindling. The kindling has to be bundled tight together. And I prayed that it burn it out of him. That it just light him up and burn all the old wineskins, all the dross out of him. And as I walked away, and I prayed something I haven't prayed verbally before that I can remember. But I prayed that, like the woman with the issue, that he would draw strength from the Lord through me. And as I walked down his ramp, I started making my way after we finished the prayer. I started getting weaker and weaker and weaker. I could still function, but I was getting weaker. And I was praising him because I realized he answered it. And I went to town for some stuff, and I came back, and I was messing about, and I was like, I got to go lay down. So I laid down on the bunk. Chris was in there. We talked for a minute or so. And it seemed foolish to me at the time because I laid down for like 3 to 5 minutes. Didn't even close my eyes, and then boom, up again. And when he came in, I did not realize he was still struggling. Didn't even think about it at the time. And then I think I heard Michael and them saying that, bless his heart, he looked so tired. And I looked over at him. Oh, he was up here at that time. And his eyes made my eyes, and he did that. And I was like, and I thought, for just a brief minute, I was like, why isn't he fully well? I mean, he was honoring him. He was here. That's what the point was. But I was like, why wasn't he fully well? And then it dawned on me. And me and him talked about it later on. The Lord revealed it to him a little bit too. That's what the Lord did to us. Those scars are difficult to bear. They're beauty. They're beautiful to us because we realize what he purchased with those scars. That every one of them was not, they were needed. Every one of them were needed. But one thing I noticed, as miserable as he was physically, and Sarah knew he was miserable physically. And that's the way we are with the Lord. We know what he bore for us, and he knows what we bore for him. But it does not take away. It adds the blessings to it. It adds more intimacy there because they're laced with pure gold. Those scars, they're when Paul said, I bear on my body, he could have disrobed and said, I bear on my body the brand marks of Christ. It was glorious to the Lord. It may not have been in the flesh, but that's what he wants with all of us. And I'm not worried that these brothers and sisters aren't here because they will be victorious this feast. He's been raising them up. And it's not just me. It's other people have prayed for different ones. They've raised up. Last night we were praising for, I don't know. I guess I was up here about 6:32, and then some other people came, and then I broke for a minute, and they stayed up here praising. So technically, the praise was going on from about 6:30 to almost 1. And the Lord showed up so powerful. So no matter what, his passion for us is unending. It's unending. It doesn't matter if I get up here and sob like a little child. It doesn't matter if we dance and jump around like crazy people to the world. It doesn't matter if we're laid down ill and wondering why. He's pleased him to crush the Son before the foundation of the world and reach into his side and pull us out. And it pleased the Son to look at when he was going into the garden, even when he said 3 times, if there's another way, we were that joy. We are his glory. His bride, the Lord revealed to Dad that the Shekinah glory, the glory of the Lord, that's the feminine. That's the bride. That's the glory of the Lord. We're his glory. It's hard to imagine, but it's hard for me to wrap my head around it, why he would pick me. But we're the glory of the Lord. And it pleases him when we can say, and I noticed that every time someone was sick, or even one of their family members, the enemy was trying to stop either a message, a word, a praise, that dance. And so he's like, he'll attack this one. That didn't work. They press through. I'll attack this one. Oh, that didn't work. I'll attack this. Oh, well, I'll just lay you down physically then. And that doesn't work either. He's getting mad. And thank the Lord for it. Because the Lord's going to be victorious. And I look out here at each and every face, no matter how physically strong, how spiritually strong they are. And I know some are stronger than I spiritually, and rightly so. Because when the Lord needs me to be strong, I'll be strong. But there's not a one that I would withhold anything from. Nothing. And I can say that and know it now. Because he brought me to the place where I could say, Lord, whether it's a loved one, whether it's me laying upon someone that's burning up with fever, whether it's me sitting and watching everybody jump around and dance and be blessed by it, and eventually get my stubborn little mule butt up and do it with them. It blesses his soul. We are washing over him with our tears of joy and our praise, mending his wounds, lifting him high, and the hordes of hell can't stand it. And I praise him for that, because one day we're going to trample those ashes under our dancing with the Lord. And I thank him for it. In Jesus' name.